So is Santa Clara, are you able to hear us?
I know they're on.
Okay, we'll give them a moment.
I can hear.
That's who? That's Loy?
This is Loy.
Okay. We are just trying to deal with the technology.
Okay, thank you.
There's Loy. Great. So now we're looking for the Santa Clara folks.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Great. All right.
All right, terrific. Thank you. This is item 16, which is the report of the accreditation team to Santa Clara Unified School District. Consultant Miranda Gutierrez will introduce this item. Joining her via technology are institutional representatives Karen Rock, the induction coordinator, Kevin Keegan, assistant superintendent of human resources, and team lead Loy Dakwa. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? Ms. Gutierrez, would you please begin?
So the Santa Clara Unified School District induction visit took place April 1st to April 3rd. We had a team of 3, a team lead, common standards reviewer, and then a program reviewer. And I just want to speak and say how beneficial it was that the team did a lot of pre-work before they got to the visit. They went in knowing a lot, knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to write, what to write. And I think that speaks to the pre-meetings that Loy had set up in advance of the visit, and it just speaks to her leadership as a team lead. So thank you for that. And also thank you to the Santa Clara Unified School District for hosting the visit, being very responsive to all the questions and needs during the visit. It helped things run efficiently. And then the last thing I want to say is just that when you go to these site visits, you go to look at the ed prep programs, but it's always neat to hear other things that the districts are doing outside of the induction program and how it affects the teachers and students. So with that, I'll turn it over to our team lead, and just everything proceeded with normal accreditation protocols.
Thank you, Miranda. Good morning, COA members. My name is Loy Dakwa, and on behalf of the team, I would like to extend our gratitude for the opportunity to serve on the Santa Clara Unified School District site visit with Miranda Gutierrez as our consultant. We were truly honored. Before I get into the report, I'd like to thank the Santa Clara Unified School District staff and program leaders Karen Rock and Roseanne Russell, as well as Assistant Superintendent of HR, Kevin Keegan, for the warm hospitality. All logistical needs were satisfied and we worked comfortably throughout the visit. The team found the visit productive and expeditious, and as Miranda alluded to, we did quite a bit of preparation before we arrived on the site. We had 3 online meetings prior to the visit. The first meeting was to get acquainted with each other and build some level of camaraderie, and to scan the organization of the program documents on the institution's website. The second meeting was to discuss our preliminary observations, and the third meeting was to discuss what we noticed and what we wondered. As a matter of record, we documented our discussions online, and any items that were identified that could clarify our wonderings were communicated to the institution by Miranda prior to arrival. And when we got there, interviews with program leaders, institutional leadership, candidates, and other stakeholders confirmed much of what we had gleaned from the program website, and any clarification or additional evidence needed during the visit was readily provided. As a result of a thorough examination of the evidence, the team found all standards met and recommends full accreditation. On background, Santa Clara Unified School District Induction Program is a single district program in the Human Resources Division led by 2 program leaders, one with a focus on secondary teachers and the other elementary teachers. They currently have 18 Year 1 candidates and 21 Year 2 candidates, and these candidates are served by 27 part-time mentors. A few highlights from the visit include the following. 1, committed institutional leadership. Interviews with upper leadership indicated a strong knowledge of the program, and a dedication to serve and retain new teachers. We found that the program leaders were consistently supported, and program needs are often met and given priority over other district initiatives. It was evident that the program leaders themselves are extremely dedicated and received a multitude of accolades from candidates, advisory members, and site administration. 2, mentorship to candidates. Candidates spoke favorably about the coaching they received from mentors and the lengths to which they will go to meet their needs. It is evident that the candidates have a solid foundation of support and are receiving individualized attention for areas of need according to the 2015 induction standards. Individual learning plans are developed in a timely manner according to the candidate's professional goals, and growth is monitored within the California standards for the teaching profession. Third one is their mentor support and evaluation. A highly collaborative mentor community is in place, and regular trainings are offered throughout the year. Logs from candidates demonstrate the work being done with mentors, giving program leaders the opportunity to review and assess their impact on candidate growth. Mentors also evaluate themselves and establish a professional growth plan for their own progress. Overall, the team found a robust program that serves its beginning teachers effectively and is impacting student learning through job-embedded goal setting and various inquiry projects. These are coupled with multiple opportunities for professional learning and reflection to bolster teacher efficacy. We're pleased and satisfied with our decision of full accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dakwa, for your service as team lead and your report. I now would like to provide the institutional representatives with the opportunity to briefly comment on the visit and a reminder that this is not an opportunity to argue the findings of the report.
I'd just like to start in the same vein as everybody else. Thank you to the team. Thank you to Loy and the whole team for just their walking us through this process, for the questions ahead of time, for digging in our district and seeing what's going on, for highlighting the good, and asking the questions that needed to be asked. So we appreciate that process. And I think it's also an opportunity just for me to say thank you to Karen and Roseanne, who's not here right now, who have developed what I believe is an amazing program and hopefully was highlighted to you all today. I don't know.
Yeah, appreciate the team coming, and it was it takes a lot of work to get ready for the visit, but it's all productive work, and it was a great experience, and I enjoyed growing myself within the process. So, and the team, we enjoyed having them here, and we're happy with the findings. So. Yeah.
Thank you so much. At this time, the COA has the opportunity to make comments, suggestions, ask for clarifications. Another great visit and wonderful report. Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. This is an action item. Do I have a motion? A motion by Member Riggs, second by Member Borges. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations.
Thank you.
If I could just say
have a wonderful day.
One more thank you to Miranda. She was wonderful to work with and helped us from the beginning. So I didn't mention her name specifically, but thank you.
All right. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I am going to suggest that we take a lunch break. Our next time certain is 1 o'clock. But we could come back a little bit early and revisit item 25. Is that the IPR? And that would shorten our day on the other end. So let's say 12:30. Good afternoon, Committee on Accreditation. I'm calling the afternoon session to order. We are starting this afternoon session by revisiting item 12, which is the discussion of initial program review with consultant Miranda Gutierrez. Yes, it's item 25. And the floor is open for discussion. Ms. Gutierrez, would you like to remind us where we left off and what our thinking is? Sure.
So if I remember correctly, before we took a break for the regular agenda items, we had talked about pieces of program review. We'd also talked about some sort of provisional approval from the COA meeting until a time to be determined, whether they have a site visit coming up or some other checks and balances we can do if they're maybe in the year 1 or 2 of their accreditation cycle.
Great, correct. And Ms. Member Chakowski, you had your hand up when we moved on to the next item.
And thank you for remembering that. I was going to say that I think in addition to having potentially a shorter sort of trial period, maybe preliminary period for a initial program to get off the ground, one thing that I think might be helpful, and this is obviously informed by my experience going through program review, is if potentially as part of that initial approval, some non-negotiable pieces of evidence could be identified as being required for submission at certain times. I'm thinking of course, the cost of having people handling these programs and that's expensive and time intensive. But if there were like a list of documents or materials, deliverables, if you will, that needed to be submitted at certain times, depending on the type of initial program approval, I think that would be helpful. I mean, it would give you all an opportunity to examine real things coming from programs. And you were saying that, 50 pages of narrative is often not as useful as 10 good artifacts, right? So you'd have that set of things for your own reference, but maybe more importantly, your description of those artifacts that were required for submission would help the program ensure that they're in fact considering the important dimensions of, their program's development before they go down the wrong path inadvertently. I don't think anybody's trying to do the wrong thing. It just might happen without direction and without a person telling you. Having some very clear descriptors on those artifacts, I think would be helpful.
I just have a quick question on that. Are you talking about during that preliminary
Yes.
period or whatever we end up calling? Okay.
Right, like maybe, you preliminary approvals granted, given, going through this whole process. Yes, but even sooner, maybe between IPR and like 2 years or something, like out of the chute, like here's some things to prove that some really basic things informed by everybody's experience here. What are the places where programs really, you could even look back at the reports that have been submitted for programs in certain areas and identify some of the recurring areas of need or weaknesses or areas where conditions were applied, and then, try to keep those conditions from taking root early.
Member Forbes?
Well, and on those notes, also thinking from the point of view of a program sponsor who has multiple programs who have different start and effectiveness dates, it seems like it would be a helpful thing to build this into the existing systems that were designed to monitor these anyway, like the ADS, which is yearly. So if we had the appropriate questions on the ADS, like just today when we were talking about enrollments, how enrollments are defined in the ADS has been a little bit fuzzy. And so making sure that we are getting the data that we need through the ADS could really improve things for everybody, but also streamline and still strengthen that process. And maybe there's an addendum of questions, I don't know what the programming of that would be like, that are for these programs that are preliminarily approved, right? Same thing with the surveys that we're getting from candidates and employers and cooperating teachers and others, right? And making sure that those are capturing the kind of information we want so that we don't set up a separate system that then has to be monitored. And, that's my take.
Member Riggs, and then Krisha and Alvarado.
I think the language is important. And so, thinking about preliminary or clearing is one potential. But additionally, it's even programs that are fully through the process, it doesn't matter if we do something that makes us out of compliance. And I'm just wondering if the handbook has that kind of language in it, just to make sure that all of us understand that we're not clear for 7 years just because we went through a successful accreditation process. If we're found to be out of compliance with preconditions or with standards, that we can be, held accountable for that. And it doesn't matter that we have a piece of paper that says we were approved.
There, is that better? Okay, thank you. So when we talk about using the ADS, and I'm trying to the timeline when they are initially or preliminarily approved, how long is it before they are actually in the ADS or able to actually go in and report? Right away? Okay. Because I think that would make a lot of sense. And with the types of artifacts and the questions, some of the easy things are making sure that your mentor teachers are, qualified or whatever, whatever your checklist or whatever your qualification is for that, or how you keep track of those things. How are you keeping track of the hours and that sort of thing? Asking those kinds of questions, I think, would be really helpful to initial programs who are struggling with just those types of logistical programmatic things.
So I'm not opposed to using existing systems, but I think that we need to be thoughtful about not capturing sort of deviation from a program, in that you may have entities that are using the same language but very different definitions, and you will not capture that in a survey. You will capture that in interviews and observations, and so somehow maybe enhancing existing systems, but not just self-report. There has to be some way to validate that indeed the program being implemented is a program that was approved, and not an interpretation or a variation or something else that's different.
Member Forbes.
Well, and I remember in our discussions on the committee to streamline and strengthen accreditation, of which Iris and I were part, one of the concepts that we kept coming back to is this idea of red flags. And so I think we have some good definitions of what red flags are, but what's the mechanism for us to act on those, right? And how does that affect the staff? Who's going to be the receiver of a lot of this information before it comes to the program review. So in between those times, what might we need to put in place? A focused site visit maybe, or some other way in which the COA could act earlier than waiting for that report at the end.
And some good thinking going on here. Member Czukowski.
Well, you say a rapid response team. That just makes me think of, the sooner, the whole spirit behind induction is the sooner you're in a classroom and you're responsible for these kids, the sooner you got to learn these good habits. You got to develop processes and protocols. And just reflecting back on some of these stellar programs we heard from this morning, what they have in place is processes that are embedded in the way they do things, and they have vision and that informs their mission that's articulated with their processes. So everything kind of fits together, and they've had a chance to somehow articulate these various aspects of a complex program. Well, out of the chute, that's really difficult to do in the beginning. And if you have a mistake or if you do something wrong, that just gets embedded in this institutional evolution, which is a lot harder to undo than it is to get it right the first time, right? So efficiency in the end is the goal, and you do that early in the process, not, a couple years in.
Sorry. I guess this has really got me going. But so, for example, one of the things that occurred to me as a red flag today, even in a program that was well designed and had great people implementing it, was the rapid rise in the number of candidates, right? And through everyone's goodwill and the rapid response of the district, this individual was responding, quickly, and it seemed like the evaluation question that Iris asked about had been managed. But down the road, if they keep experiencing the rapid growth, and so in other words, if you see coming into the ADS, for example, a big spike from one year to the next, that might be one of the triggers to take a closer look and just see, is this institution backing this up now with providing more resources, more infrastructure?
So perhaps suggesting creating a list of red flags, or
that was what we talked about during this committee that looked at streamlining and strengthening the process, and out of which many of these changes came, right, with the excellent help of the staff. And so we had listed a number of red flags, like change in leadership at the top, rapid changes like cycling through superintendents. That might be a red flag. There were numerous things that were generated by the committee, but we have a lot of data to be able to, kind of look back on, as was suggested before from these reports, to look at what some of the trends are that we've been seeing that seem to be predictive of, or that in retrospect might have been predictive of issues.
And then, Member Christian.
Another red flag in, thinking about data and how it's recorded and how it's gathered for the institutions. And, it is harder to undo something than it is to get it right the first time. But just the idea, or just the way that they were, I forgot which institution it was. I think it was Western Governors, where how they determined the completion rates, or how they counted their candidates, and at which point in the program these candidates were entering. That's like a huge thing. It's like institutions all have these varied ways of figuring out who's in their program at what time and what that means. That would be something that is a huge red flag.
And following on that point, in that, there is a danger where some programs use their own interpretation and are almost skirting the issue of saying, well, they're not technically in our program, though they're taking 90% of our courses. That there should be some way to operationally define what does it mean to be in a program, regardless of whether they have an admissions letter or not. I think that there should be an operational definition. You complete X percent of the program, you're in the program, even if the program hasn't officially admitted you. They're allowing them to be part of it. So I think that's part of it to when we're looking at admission, retention, graduation rates for programs. If we're going to go that route, that we operationally define what does it mean to count a student. I think that's going to be critical.
It seems like much of our challenge does come down to definitions. And the team here has done a great job. I refer to the definitions quite frequently, but I think continuing to add to those definitions is going to really help institutions and help us in our work. And our readers had, in the handbook, I'm just thinking, where has it been defined about how to report your data? Was there a clear definition around intern? What is an intern? What is it? What is required with the number of units? For example, governors, it sounded like you could identify yourself as being a credential candidate even in year one of your BA program, right? So do you count those people or not? Going back to Member Alvarado's statement, is it a matter of units? Once you complete 60 units, you can identify yourself as a teacher candidate as you've enrolled in a program, or whatever many units it is, but 120 or whatever it is. 3 years was awful quick. I wondered about those number of units. Yeah, Member Briggs.
I honestly was surprised because this issue came up years ago, and when we finally added it into the report that you had to have your completers and your enrollees, current students, and I thought that would straighten it out because people were struggling with this. So I was surprised by that, and I, again, also feel like we all should know what do we tell our students as to how long our program is. And so even if it's bachelor's or whatever, how long does the credential portion take? And I do think this is an issue, as you say, for required data, that there should be a match between what we tell our candidates and how we measure their completion. And that is, we want to make sure that we don't have people who are taking, who are having lots of enrollees and not really. Yes.
And for the definitions, I'm wondering, does the who decides on what those definitions are, aside from what we pull out of Ed Code? When I go onto our website, the CTC website, and I look up definitions, where do those definitions come from? Do they come from
Usually groups like this, or advisory board members, or panels and that kind of thing. I think there's been a constant challenge with numbers when you're talking length of program, because we always respect the autonomy of institutions to sort of define, their context. So that's always our challenge. They have different start and end times. They have rolling admissions. So it continues to plague us, I think, in terms of how do you come up with the right question in a survey, and I mean that by the ADS system, that will get us the answer that we are looking for in the right context for somebody like, University of Phoenix or National that has rolling admissions as opposed to a traditional academic year or people on court. It's been a constant challenge. And if anybody has the answer, we're happy to.
I don't know that I have any answers. So I'll just preface it with that. But as somebody who's just, Monday, Tuesday, Cheryl and I were here at this residency lab shindig thing. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, much of what you're talking about here with initial program review kind of applies to our nascent residency grant efforts. There's some things that I need to be thinking about as we, as an LEA, partner with, 4 other post-secondary entities to initiate a program that aligns with those grant expectations. So I'm kind of thinking about doing that as if I were doing initial program review, but that makes me think then there's a lot of lessons learned here about how to launch new initiatives that could be very instructive across the field, not least in the $75 million residency experiment that California is investing in, right? So I guess to that end, my suggestion would be, these are all teacher pipeline development efforts, right, in a larger sense. The whole reason behind having accreditation is to strengthen the resources that interface directly with students, right? And we need more of them, and they need to be of higher caliber, right? That's why we have all these expectations for our programs. So maybe by way of helping people reach clarity on the differences among these different groups of people who are involved in that pipeline, there could be some sort of here's, I don't know what it would be, a white paper, a graphic organizer that just has these various roles that people play. So it's not time dependent. And I like that. Good. I'm glad. You start put my program in a September to September thing, and it doesn't work with reality. So thank you for allowing local context to prevail. I think it's absolutely the way to go. But then I think we just need to think bigger in terms of what's my unique role in this larger effort in my region to build and support high quality educators, right, as a teacher pipeline. So I don't know, to the degree that some of the smart people in this room who spend some time together could think about what tools, simple things could go out to practitioners. I think that could be useful in terms of communicating the various nodes in that pipeline.
All right. My notes say this is an action item. No, it's not. Okay, I didn't think so. Okay. All right. That takes us almost up to 1 o'clock. Is there any other concluding comments? And is
one concluding comment since we have a couple minutes. So it sounds like what I'm hearing has been a combination of what you're thinking for and the initial approval and eventual approval, whatever those terms are going to be, of programs, but also some of this you're wanting to apply to all programs. It sounds like there was a combination of those. Am I hearing that right? Okay. So I think what's the challenging part for us, we're going to have to think of the mechanism that takes you from some sort of provisional approval to full approval, and what that means. But also finding out what's the length of time. Again, we'll get back to length of, how long do you think a program should operate under the provisional time frame before they can be shown to get full approval? I guess I'm just trying to think mechanics before I go in and have this. Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question. Member Crescia and then Sullivan.
So to kind of reframe that, not necessarily the length of time, but as they go along moving toward full, at what intervals would they have to provide evidence that they are implementing what they said they were implementing, that their program was still the program they were initially approved for, and or not. And then the backside of that or not is then what happens next, so that when they do, because it's kind of hard. We just adopted the new standards and the new cycle, that horse has already left the barn, so to speak. But if we could establish between IPR and site visits some intervals that are flexible and program specific to show this evidence, I think that might help troubleshoot some of these red flags.
Which makes me, we have the the biennial report. No, we don't have that anymore. Yeah, Ms. Sullivan.
So I think you're probably thinking along the same lines as I was, which is if what we're going to require at whatever the interval is, if what we're going to require is evidence, then I think we have to consider, I think we might have to ask what pieces of evidence we want to see, and that may dictate the intervals. Because, for instance, how many cycles, so if you want to look at program improvement data that they're gathering and analyzing, they need a full cycle to do that. And what's a cycle? Is it a year? Do you want to see them do it for 2 years so they can compare those 2 years? So perhaps we might need to identify the evidence, and then that will dictate the cycle.
Sounds like we need to roll up our sleeves. Member Riggs and Ms.
The thing that twists my stomach is when someone has gone through program review and then we don't find out until too late that they've got people in their program and it's not the program we think it is, or that they think it is, or it's a program that was approved on paper, and then it turns out that there's critical components of it that are missing, or preconditions that are missing. And I'm not sure. I think some of the things that you've come up with to improve the program approval process may help that, because we really don't want people to get program approval when there are these glaring issues that maybe there's some way could have been discovered. If it's written up in such a way that that it's hidden in some way, and I don't think people purposely try to hide it. I think they don't understand. But if it's written up in such a way that it doesn't even matter, the program approval process can't catch it because of the way it's written. It's not enough just to improve the program approval process. It has to be that there is this catch somewhere. And so the question I have about how long can that be? When we come up to a point and we say, oh my goodness, there are 50 people in this program, and they really aren't in a program that aligns with the standards or the preconditions, perhaps. And so what do we do with those people who are in that program? And then we come to this really horrific thing of, well, you can't let them complete what you have because it's not really an approved program. And we don't want that to go on long. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. I think we've got a good process in place, but when it does happen once, it's too much. So we have to try to find it as soon as we can, and I don't know the answer to that.
So that kind of goes to starting off with the conditional approval and then some sort of check, and then the following 18 months, year, because they have to complete one cycle of their program to produce the evidence. Yeah.
And that's something that, because I've been doing other meetings and doing some other thinking, that's a critical thing. For example, school counseling, school psychology, school social work programs, those are 3-year programs. They're not 1-year programs usually. So I think there's a real important factor of how long is the program designed to be. And one of the things I think we should really think about, and staff will think about a lot, is what happens after the first group of completers. That's a really prime time. If they've gone through a group of completers, we could do some sort of a review. I think there are some things in place that we didn't have in place before, especially the preconditions review in years 1 and 4. We are only in year 2 of that. But as we get going, that means no institution is going more than 3 years without preconditions and or site visit. Preconditions and site, which we catch it all there. So That is really different from where we were before, which was preconditions were looked at during the site visit, kind of. So I think that's already a huge improvement.
And just to add that the preconditions now really require some pretty clear evidence and documentation that they didn't in the past. So it's not just writing a nice paragraph.
All right. Thank you for that report. Oh, one more thing. We're after our time starting at 1 o'clock. So.
Oh,
yeah.
I just wanted to say I thought, too, that it was great that we've moved that program review to right before the site visit. So we're really aware of what's going on when we go to the site visit, as opposed to having years between the two and things have all changed. And so it didn't make as much sense. So I think we've improved that, too. So that's something that's going to be coming up as you see new programs now.
So in closure, I'm thinking you have taken a lot of notes, and we can revisit this at our next meeting in June. That'd be good. Okay, thank you so much.
And it looks, and we have somebody on, do we have Carol? Can you hear us?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Oops. All right. Consultant Dr. Sarah Solari Colombini will introduce this item. Joining her at the table is Institutional Representative Melissa Roberts, Director, and joining and another member. Would you introduce yourself? Great. Thank you. And by Technology Team Lead, Carol Klaus. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? Recusal by Member Alvarado. All right. Dr. Colombini, will you begin, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the Santa Cruz County Office of Education sponsors a teacher induction program. And so at the site visit that was held February 4th through the 6th, this program was reviewed. As part of the accreditation cycle and in preparation for the site visit, some consultation was held with the program and the team lead. All of this occurred prior to the site visit several times, actually. We had some monthly Zoom conference calls and, again, both with the team lead and myself and the people that you see here at the table. So a pre-visit meeting was actually conducted on November 26th of 2018, and both the team lead, Carol Klaus, and myself attended. And at that point in time, logistics for the visit as well as the interview schedule was solidified for the February 4th through the 6th visit. The visit was conducted by the team lead, Carol Klaus, along with two team members, Dawn Aguila and Catherine Tolliver. And there were no unusual circumstances for this visit. So I would like to thank the Santa Cruz County Office of Education team for their hospitality. The team was able to work really hard and diligently on reviewing evidence and interviewing team members, interviewing all of their team members, not our team, but their team members, so that we were able to do a thorough review of the program and were confident of the findings that the team came to. So Carol, if you want to begin.
Good afternoon. First off, I'd like to thank my team members, Catherine Tolliver and Dawn Aguila, and especially thanks to Sarah, our state consultant, for helping us along the way. The Santa Cruz County Office of Education and the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project was very helpful. Their attention to detail made this visit very easy, so I want to thank them for hosting. They're always available to respond to questions, provide more evidence, and go above and beyond to make sure we had everything. One thing, we were ready to give the final report, and they were still ready to give us more evidence because they were so worried that we didn't have enough. So we really want to thank them for that. And also, the organization of their website made it very, very easy for us to review the evidence. We could find things. And so that organization was outstanding. So some things I'd like to point out about the program. The program leadership is extremely responsive to the needs of the candidates, the mentors, and the site administrators. All stakeholders mention that program staff are only a phone call away if there's a question or a concern. And this program is highly effective at communicating with all stakeholders. Every spring, they schedule visits with each partnering district so that the districts and program leadership can review the district needs, go over program requirements, analyze data, and develop a plan for the upcoming year. The mentors are a key to the success in the program. Program leadership makes sure that the mentors are highly trained. And the mentors stated that the training they received is the best professional development they've ever received in their teaching careers. So this program is constantly getting feedback and analyzing data. They're always looking for ways to make the induction experience positive for everyone. And interviews showed that everyone in the program, no matter who we talked to, it was a positive experience. So as a result of the evidence gathered via interviews and documentation, the team unanimously recommends accreditation for the Santa Cruz County Office of Education. Thank you.
Thank you for your service as team lead and for your report. Much appreciated. We would like to now call upon the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you that this is not a time to dispute the findings. Not that you would, but rather a time to provide any thoughts or insight or anything you'd like to share with the COA at this time.
There we go. Okay. Hi, again, my name is Melissa Roberts. I'm the director of the Santa Cruz Silicon Valley New Teacher Project. We really want to extend our deepest appreciation and thanks to the team, Sarah in particular, who really helped shepherd us along this process, which was new, and making sure that we had what was required of us. Thanks certainly you, Carol, who along the way was assuring us that we would make it through, and just you made it very, very easy on us. You were all so accessible, and we have great appreciation for that. So thank you. It was a wonderful opportunity and experience for our program. The feedback, we thrive on feedback, and so really did see this as an opportunity to just continue to grow and improve. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And at this time, the COA can make any comments or if you have any questions or. All right, Member Chakowski.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you again. I think that you presented at one of the induction conferences a couple of years ago, and in looking at the number of candidates that you serve, I mean that's pretty formidable. That's a lot of moving parts, and I think the final comment that was shared with us on the team visit was that you just couldn't find anybody who could say anything negative about the program. So to me, that's pretty astounding, given how many people, you can cherry pick your fans and have them report as you hope they would. And I'm just wondering, like, if you can just say something about how what are like the top two strategies that your project has used to ensure consistent service to such a large number of people in a wide-ranging area? How do you do that?
Thank you for that question. I will share two nuggets, if you will, to our experience. First, it's the mentors. It's training the mentors, making sure that the mentors feel supported, making sure that the districts are part of an integral process in selecting the right people to work with adults and to have that passion and energy for all of the students that we serve, and that they continue to receive their own ongoing job-embedded professional development. right? So they can serve the teacher. So that would be one. The second that Carol highlighted, and I'm channeling Ellen Moyer's voice in my mind right now, relationship. And those spring visits that we have, the time that the district leaders take to meet with us in person, it's crucial, it's critical that we maintain open and honest, regular communication. And so our district partners are an integral process in making sure that we are in a place to serve our teachers. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This is an action item. At this time, I'd like to take a motion. Member Chakowski, second by Forbes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
That takes us to item 18, which is the report of the accreditation team to Ceres Unified School District. Consultant Roxanne Perdue will introduce this item. Joining her at the table are institutional representatives Rhonda Munoz, Induction Program Specialist Sharon Carter, Coordinator Assessment and Accountability, and Team Lead Darby Williams. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right. Ms. Perdue, will you begin, please?
Good afternoon. Welcome back from lunch. People were eating in here, and I'm fasting for medical reasons, and I still smell the smells, and I'm hungry. So if I look shaky, it's just, that's the reason. Darby's here for me, though. So Ceres Unified School District offers a teacher induction program, and their program was first approved back in June 2015, actually, so this was their first site visit. Their site visit was conducted March 18th through 20th. It took place with no extraordinary circumstances. We had a wonderful 3-member team consisting of our team lead, Darby Williams, and then Roseanne Rasul on Common Standards and Diane Randall on Program Standards. I want to specifically acknowledge here with us today, by the way, Rhonda Munoz. I hope I said your last name right. I always just call her Rhonda. She's the Induction Program Specialist, I think is her title there. But she is the most organized, high-energy person that you could ever meet. And so she created such a smooth and organized site visit for us that things went really smoothly, and we were able to really dig down into our purpose there. So thank you for that. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our team lead, Darby, to present the team findings.
Oh, hello again. Good afternoon. I was sneaking a lunch back there, so she was smelling mine, I think. Sorry about that. I want to first acknowledge Roxanne. She is very organized. She is very, very capable, and I thoroughly enjoyed having her as a partner on the review. And then I also want to extend my appreciation of Rhonda. I think these last couple programs are all run by Type A's, people that are extremely dedicated, capable, and conscientious. And certainly that describes Rhonda. So, and of course my team members, Roseanne, we had Roxanne and Roseanne, and Diane Randall. So it was a great team and an really easy visit. So a couple of things I wanted to point out that really struck the team. One aspect that we were impressed about was they have a really strong team of leaders. And these leaders include the superintendent and appropriate cabinet members along with unit directors. And they support each other, and that was available to us to see. The superintendent's supportive. He sets a tone that the program is integral to the new teacher growth and important to the goals of the district. So you have a great unit, and they're very collaborative. We also want to especially note the collaborative nature of the organization. The leaders of the program are positive and very service-oriented. And the last comment I want to make about the program, I bet you can guess what's coming. Across all stakeholder interviews, there was an overwhelming appreciation for the personal and individualized attention, the availability, and the dedication to educational excellence on the part of Rhonda. I think this sounds just like the last one. I tell you, we've got some good people in charge of programs. Lastly, and the most important piece, was that the candidates are positive about their induction experience, and they reported they were growing in ways they did not anticipate. As a candidate shared, I'm now a more reflective teacher, and I have grown as a professional. So based upon that evidence, the team found all common and program standards were met, and that we recommended accreditation.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, for your service as team lead and for your report. Much appreciated. At this time, we'd like to call the institutional representatives to make a few comments about the visit. I'll remind you that this isn't a time to argue the findings, but just to share with us a little bit about the visit and your experience with it.
So thank you. So first of all, I would like to extend thanks to Roxanne for seeing us through the process and being available to answer my questions. For Darby as the team lead and for the other team members, it was a very smooth process, and it was a great learning experience. And I was just happy to have their views on how the program was running and any feedback that they gave us.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you had a good experience with the visit. At this time, the COA is, the floor is open for comments, kudos, suggestions. Well, you must have had a great visit. You've left us speechless. So thank you for putting together such a nice visit, team lead, consultant. This is an action item. I need a motion by Member Amos, a second by Member Chakowski. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations.
Yes, we do. Oh, is item 20 here? No. We are going to stick with, there she is. All right. Terry, I guess we could ask, do you think the CSU Northridge people are on? All right. Okay. Can CSU Northridge hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was going to say Marco.
Wonderful. Okay. I knew that someone was on Zoom. There we go. All right.
Okay, welcome. Item 19 is the report of the accreditation team to California State University Northridge. Director Terry Clark and, do I have the right? Okay, Consultant Hart Boyd will be present by Zoom. Terry Clark is at the table. Joining them at the table is team lead Mark Carey, and via technology are institutional representatives Shari Tarver-Baring, interim dean, and at the table, interim Christine Hayashi, associate dean. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? No? All right, Ms. Clark, will you begin, please?
Yes, good afternoon. This is the visit to CSU Northridge, as our co-chair mentioned. It took place March 10th through the 13th. I'm not going to mention all the team members. We had a 9-person team, including Hart and me. The only slightly unusual thing about this visit is that Mark Carey found out he was the team lead on Friday, March 7th. And he was there on Sunday, and he got on the airplane, and he did the visit. Dr. James Zarillo did all the prep work for us with this visit, but he had a family situation come up. And so at the last minute, we had to have a switch, but we've worked together previously, and it went well. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark to do the team's report.
Thank you.
Yeah, Friday to Sunday, that was a fairly steep curve. Actually, I had looked at a bunch of documents prior to that. So let me start with just a thank you to everyone who preceded me and then who worked with me on the visit. I had a chance to look at documents prior to the time I got there and was really impressed with the way that the institution had documented both its programs and its common standards. So that for me made it a real quick rather than steep learning curve. I also have to express sincere thanks to Terry and Hart and Jim for the work they did with the team leading up to the visit. So one of the things that, we talk about how we're constantly refining the process and looking for ways to make it better. One of the things that we've been doing more and more is front-loading the team's work. And this was an excellent example of that. By the time I stepped in, the team members had all not only reviewed their programs, but they'd all conducted Zoom interviews with the program chairs or coordinators for the programs that they were working with. So we were able to step on campus with a team that was really well prepared. Our goal always is to be able to have no surprises when teams get onto sites for visits, so that we can really spend all of our time there focusing on the evidence of quality and effectiveness. And this was one of those cases where it was absolutely true. You've read the report, all 57 pages of it. And so I'm going to spend less time talking about the contents of the report and want to take just a few minutes to talk about a couple of process things. Visits to large multi-program institutions like Northridge tend to have a fairly predictable rhythm, and that was true with this visit as well. We spent time initially talking to program completers, community members, people who are coming in off campus who can give us some sense of what the quality of the program is from people having taken part in it. Monday morning, we generally talk to institutional leadership and institutional faculty. In the afternoon, we generally talk to candidates. And so by the end of the day, Monday, we have a fairly clear idea of what's happening across the program and across the unit. That ended up being particularly critical because under the new set of common standards, institutions no longer need to provide documentation for a number of key common standard issues that common standards reviewers would have been able to review prior to the visit. So, common standards kind of fall into two categories. One is requirements that are common across all programs, and the other are requirements that reside more at the institutional and unit level. So common standards reviewers had looked at evidence for unit and institutional operations, but were dependent completely on program reviewers for evidence about those common standards that had to do with requirements across all programs. That caused a bit of shift in terms of how deliberations normally would have occurred because we needed to know as early as possible from program standards program sampling members what things looked like across the unit. So we spent a good deal of time Monday evening talking about those areas that were common across programs rather than those things that are unit level. And determined fairly quickly that by that time we had pretty consistent evidence for most of those common standards. So that enabled us to focus our Tuesday work on things that may have not been quite as clear as we needed to have them be in order to make decisions on standards, and to follow up on both program-specific standards requirements and unit and institutional requirements, which we're able to do. I also have to once again come back to the institution because Sherry and Chris were incredible when it came to providing anything we needed. So if we had a question about anything, the answer came really quickly. In fact, we even got answers to questions that we hadn't asked in a couple of cases. there you go. But they were questions that we were going to ask. We just got the answers before we asked the questions. Just a little sense of how responsive these people are. By lunchtime on Tuesday, we had completed all of the interviews. And we felt that we had, with the exception of a couple of telephone follow-ups, pretty much all of the information we needed to make decisions on standards. So the deliberation process Tuesday went fairly quickly. We revisited the common standards across programs, confirmed that those were all met. We visited the common standards that were at the institutional unit level and got confirmation from program team members that, in fact, those were consistently met. And we were able to come to decisions that all program and common standards were met with the exception of a single standard in the induction program, which was met with concerns as a result of inconsistent orientation of induction mentors. So the team by the end, and the end came earlier than it often does in large visits. This was like Tuesday afternoon, and we're all saying, this is great. We've made all of the decisions. We can go and write, which we did. By the end, the team was uniformly impressed with a couple of things. One was the extent to which the level of quality across all programs and at the unit and institutional level was exceedingly high. And the second was the extent to which Northridge, with its history of working with the districts that it serves, has developed an incredibly synergistic relationship with large districts in its area. So when you look at the success of the institution, it really goes beyond the institution. A lot of this success comes as a result of the relationship that the institution has built up over a long period of time with its partners in the community. And that was really impressive to see. That's all I have.
What was the team's recommendation?
I always have to thank Terry, because there's always something I forget, and generally it's like, okay, what's the punchline? Yes, so when you look at Accreditation Handbook, all standards are met with the exception of one program standard met with concerns. There is only one choice for the team in terms of recommending, and that's accreditation. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Carey, for your service as team lead and for that wonderful report. And you make a great duo up there. Yes, and Ms. Clark, thank you. At this time, we now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you that this is not a time to dispute the team report, but rather to provide any thoughts or insight you have about the visit that you'd like to share with the COA.
I'd like to let my Associate Dean take the lead on this. She was incredible in organizing and following through on this entire visit. I think she deserves to be the one to speak at this time, and I'm grateful both for her, for Terry and Boyd, and for the entire team, which I couldn't echo from our end more, was just an incredibly wonderful experience. Supportive, informative, excellent. So let me turn this over to Chris, please.
After everything that Mark said, I just felt like saying, and I just want world peace. But I do want to say, I want to say thank you to everybody. We had a very positive experience. And I know everybody always gets worked up and stressed out, and it is tough going through accreditation, but it always is something, it's always good to look internally and say, these are places where we could do more. And I want to thank our whole team, and especially Mark Carey, who stepped in at the last minute and really got himself up to speed really fast and was wonderful to work with. And prior to him, Jim Zarillo, who was called away at the last minute, but was also helpful to us through this process, and all the people on the team. We did have a very large team, and most especially, I have to thank Terry Clark, who is sitting here, because we had lots of questions. We have lots of programs, and we have lots of people worrying about lots of things. And she was very patient. We met on a monthly basis to talk over things, and Hart would be there too. And I always had a list of questions that all my people had, and she would go through them all. And I just really want to thank her from the bottom of my heart for being supportive and getting us through this. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. At this time, the COA has the opportunity to make comments, ask questions, give them kudos. Member Alvarado.
So I'd like to commend the institution for it's an amazing report given the complexity of your programs to carefully ensure that you're not only meeting but exceeding standards in all of those varied programs is quite commendable. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Member Tchaikovsky.
Hi there. I come from the largest secondary district in the state, which probably is dwarfed by the community around your place. So I guess my question is, I noticed the comment about your relationship with large districts, which is obviously central to the mission of preparing the best teachers to work with kids. So I'm just wondering, would you mind giving us your advice for how an institution like yours builds and maintains positive relationships with district entities like mine?
Well, obviously our biggest district is the Los Angeles Unified School District, and they're huge. So it is important to make relationships there because sometimes they don't even know where our student teachers are. And it comes on many levels. Sherry Tarver Baring, our dean, she has good relationships with the top brass in the LAUSD. We also meet with them on a regular basis in a number of areas. One of the more formal would be our student teaching committee that meets on a monthly basis, and several times during the semester we invite in representatives not only from LAUSD but all of our other surrounding school districts, and allow them to let us know what their concerns are. We talk to them about issues that we're having. We also have LAUSD has also institutionalized this type of meeting with their IHE partner meetings, and so we go with other IHEs to meet with them on a semesterly basis. So it's about relationships, and it's about just making sure that if there is a problem, they know who to call, we know who to call. And again, within each department, because we are so big, they have, of course, then their own relationships with many different people, with site administrators. And so it's a matter of just a big, huge collaboration. It really is.
And I would only add to that that we are the largest providers of teachers to LA Unified of any of the teacher preparation programs in the Los Angeles area. So that means that in our area in the northern San Fernando Valley, at the schools where many of our students are in training are with our former students who are now teachers there. So it's a love fest where many of the schools are part of our college and have been through our programs. And that's really helped us in terms of our relationship with LA Unified. We're very responsive to their needs. In fact, Austin Butner, the superintendent, is coming to visit with us on Wednesday of next week to just talk some more about how we partner with them. So from the very top all the way down to the individual schools and the local district superintendents, we try to stay very close to them and very collaborative and want to be really responsive to the needs as we can try to respond to those in the schools. And we love working with our partners.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ta-da. Is that what you said? Ta-da. All right, well, this is an action item. I need a motion by Member Riggs, a second by Member Crecia. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations.
Yay.
Yay. You very much. Ta-da. Now you can say ta-da.
I'd like to call the Committee on Accreditation meeting back to order. Thank you. All right, so we are now on item 20, which is the report of the accreditation team to the Sonoma County Office of Education. Consultant Dr. Sarah Solari Colombini will present this item. Joining her at the table is team lead Dr. Thomas Smith and institutional representatives Jason Lee, Executive Director, and John Laughlin, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? Member Moore.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon.
So Dr. Solari, would you begin, please? Sorry, I was a little behind.
That's all right. No, that's fine.
I'm new here. Right?
No, that's okay. Thanks. I'm just charging forward as usual. Okay, so the Sonoma County Office of Education sponsors 5 preliminary programs and 2 Tier 2 programs, a teacher induction and an administrative services credential program. And so their 5 preliminary programs are a multiple single subject intern program, a mild moderate intern program, a moderate severe intern program, and then 2 designated subjects programs, 1 adult education and 1 career technical education program. And so a site visit was held on March 25th through the 28th to review all of these programs, all 7 programs. And as part of the process to prepare them, of course, we had several Zoom meetings once a month with the institution, and a pre-visit meeting was conducted in January, on January 22nd, with Dr. Smith and myself attending Sonoma and meeting with their team to start working on the interview schedule to ensure that we had the people that we needed to see for the site visit. So the visit itself was conducted by the team lead, Dr. Smith, and 6 team members. We had Dr. Michael Kotar, Dr. Nina Potter, we had Mary Dolan, Joe Frescatori, Barbara Howard, and Bridget Mont. There were no unusual circumstances associated with this visit, and so I'd like to provide Dr. Smith with this opportunity to share about the visit this time.
Well, first I'd like to thank the team that Sarah just outlined. They were really great in bringing their expertise, their experience, their attention to detail, to both triangulate the interviews that we did with administrators, faculty, students, and with all of the documents which the county office made available to us. I'm confident that their hard work in the field led to an accurate document that you all have before you. I'd also like to thank the Sonoma County Office of Education, particularly Jason and John, for hosting a visit to where anything we needed was made available to us, documents that we didn't have, links that we couldn't get through. All of those were resolved and made available. There were a few instances where we had some challenges getting the number of completers or candidates that we would have liked to have had in particular categories, but really that wasn't for lack of trying at the county office and people on the phone and after hours students coming in. So they were really great hosts. I wanted to start out by just saying some things that I think were really strengths of the operation of the North Coast School of Education. First, a really dedicated superintendent who's passionate about this program and really ready to provide the resources that are needed to keep this operating. A staff led by the executive director that is also passionate and works in a very collaborative leadership team environment. From the students that we interviewed and some of the completers, it was clear to us that the faculty in the program, the facilitators, and the coaches are all very dedicated, and that the students found both what they learned in the classroom, the links to practice, to be invaluable. They valued the real-life situations and the willingness of their instructors to actually help them out when they had problems in the field. Most of the feedback that we got from the students in the program was positive, and very thankful for the opportunity that they could participate, in this induction program, and even in many cases making it clear that they don't feel that they would have been able to get on a trajectory to become a teacher if this program hadn't been available. Let's So, as you've seen, and I assume, we had quite a detailed report coming out, and the recommendation, of accreditation with probationary stipulations was a unanimous recommendation by the team. I can highlight just a few areas that seem to cut across the content standards, but I won't go into depth because I'm sure that you'll all have questions to explore that level of detail. One thing that did kind of come across was challenges in program design. And some of the issues were different, but it was a theme that cut across programs. In some, particularly the single subject and multiple subject programs, the administrator programs, there was not a clear kind of theoretical or research underpinning of those programs. And that came to play out in some ways where in interviews with the instructors, it was unclear that they had the teacher education standards, in mind in the development of courses or in the teaching of those courses. It wasn't that the core syllabi weren't mapped, but just kind of through the interviews, it wasn't always clear that they had a deep understanding of the standards and how the courses were supposed to support the students in their trajectory in learning those standards. Other aspects were in the design of the program were, for example, in the administrative. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's not what I meant, but in the career and technical education programs, thank you. That's all right. You didn't know what I was asking for. Okay. In the career and technical education programs, beyond the preliminary coursework, most of the program itself and the support structure was by putting the candidates into an induction program where our team felt that there was a lack of alignment between what the candidates were supposed to be learning about the TEPs and a program that really emphasized the CSTPs. Also that the adult learning component wasn't as emphasized by just having those students in that program. So it's just another example of how some of the program design kind of deviated from the standards themselves, and the team felt had an impact on those programs. And then the other piece, which I'm sure that you all mentioned, was really a major challenge on the admissions of students into particularly the intern programs who didn't have content knowledge, and some were given the message that if they could stay in the program, if they could complete the content knowledge, within the year of the program itself. Some of them did not have certificates of clearance, even though that was a much smaller number. And we did find students that who were doing their interns in private schools, which all are problematic, related to both the preconditions and to Ed Code. So I think I'll kind of wrap up there, and do we do questions there? Or we just and we'll pass it on to Jason.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith, for your service, and to all the members of the team. So at this point, we now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We'd like to remind you that this is not a time to dispute the findings or the team report, but rather to provide any thoughts that you had about the visit that you'd like for us to know.
Thank you so much. Let me scoot a little closer to the microphone. So I'm the executive director, Jason Lee. As of July 1 this year, I started at North Coast in the county office. I came from the previous 4 years of being the assistant superintendent of human resources at Santa Rosa City Schools, which is one of the larger districts in the area, or the largest district in the area. So I had knowledge of the program on the other side. I want to first thank, I came into the position eyes wide open, and I came into accreditation eyes wide open, and it really was part of my learning. And so I really appreciate the education that our lead, Sarah, has provided, and the actual committee members provided through the process. And so I look forward to moving forward and doing what we need to do to become an exemplary program. What's coming around has been what we've been working on as a unit since the March 28th visit. So we saw this, or I personally saw this as an opportunity to get moving, get started. Certainly there were things that were pointed out that needed to be addressed immediately. And as you can see there on the preconditions, 5B, and then the intern preconditions 2 and 7, we've have already taken immediate action on those areas. And I also went through everything, and this is an opportunity for us to work with Sarah moving forward to make sure that the stipulations that come along with the team's recommendations are removed in a year's time. But this has been a great opportunity for me as someone who is new to the program to kind of take some leadership and change things up. I mean, the reality is, if you look from April 30, 2015 to the present, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 programs added to our unit. And so we've been doing a lot of work independently, and now it's an opportunity for us to do some work cohesively and coherently across our entire unit. And the reason these programs came to existence is because our superintendent saw that there's an incredible need. I mean, these are all need-based programs, and if the need wasn't out there, we wouldn't have taken those on. And we serve a huge regional area, and one of the you assume people know things about your geographic area because you do. And obviously, I remember making a map of Northern California and color coding every county we serve. And we serve 8 counties all the way to the Oregon border. So that was kind of an aha moment for me, is that why doesn't the team understand what Northern California is about? Well, he's from Southern California. Actually, he's from Dixon, so he doesn't know a little bit of Northern California. But I went all the way to Crescent City to meet with the superintendent up there, and he informed me that I'm from Central California. I'm not from Northern California. So we really do, and I have the full support of the county superintendent to do whatever needs to be done to get the program moving in the right direction, and that includes reorganization. There was a lot of great recommendations that came out of the team's visit that are workable and doable, and I'm excited about doing the work to keep meeting the needs of the districts we serve. So I appreciate what the team has done and what they provided us, and this is really kind of a roadmap. And what I provided you is kind of just this initial snapshot of how we've mapped this out so far just since the March 28th initial finding report. So thank you so much, and if you have any questions, please.
Well, thank you so much for your obvious passion and for doing all the work of bringing this to us. This is now time for the Committee on Accreditation to ask questions, to explore further information that you'd like to ask the team or the institution. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Alvarado. And then Member Chakowski.
Thank you so much for your comments. I want to follow up on the comment you made about the area you serve. Is that part of your commitment, a part of the establishment of your county office, or is that something that has been taken on in addition to the basic service area that your county office is committed to serving?
So North Coast School of Education is actually a department of the Sonoma County Office of Education, and it came into existence. I mean, we had a BITSA program for years, going all the way back to 2003. These other programs have kind of come into existence just as our superintendent, Dr. Harrington, kind of saw, and he works very collaboratively with the Northern California county offices because of the geographic isolation of many of them, the lack of resources. They kind of, and oftentimes pool resources together to meet the collective need of the group. So these kind of came into existence as Dr. Harrington was having conversations with the counties in which we cooperate or collaborate, and that's kind of why these have been added on and how they came into existence.
So as a follow-up, it seems that part of the challenge is the fact that the area is so vast and you have so many sort of remote programs that aren't being adequately resourced. And so the question is whether partnering with other entities that do have programs in the areas, like a Humboldt State or Chico State, that do have programs that in fact are designed to cover those rural remote areas. Cal State Teach, for example, it's an online program for multiple subject, that rather than trying to duplicate effort and stretching resources, I'm just wondering if that's been a consideration.
It's always a consideration, and the reality is that when you look, especially in the Humboldt area, we've been starting conversations with HSU about them taking on some of this responsibility, but a lot of the other areas don't have those opportunities. If other opportunities were to come in that were better fits, we certainly wouldn't stand in the way of that. I mean, the collective goal across the state is to provide quality teachers, regardless of the need. I mean, we serve a lot of Sonoma County is the bulk of who we serve. I mean, we have a lot of districts, 40 districts just in our county, but if we certainly would want to do what's best for regions, and if those opportunities or situations came up, we would have those conversations. And like I said, we've been working with HSU just on the fringe of looking at how, what they may be doing down the road.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming and talking with us. I noticed that one of your initial action steps is to research other induction programs, and I was wondering if you could tell us, where are you looking to get ideas and models?
Well, part of my own personal learning is, since coming in July, is just initially actually kind of surveying our own programs and the relationships locally. But I've also been working and just starting conversations with Placer, with even Tulare, and even looking at what. So Santa Cruz works with us as a Be a Teacher, but they also have an amazing induction program. And so really it's not to reinvent the wheel, but to look what's working and figure out how do we apply that to the programs and the systems that we have.
Yeah, you mentioned Santa Cruz. They were just here, before you, and I say that's a good go-to spot.
Yeah, it is. It's a great go-to spot. And so it's the luxury of having that set on. And also to Director Alvarado's question too, is that we really have looked at how we need to provide better direct support to our satellite systems. And so we've already, started scheduling regular things, inviting. We have a regional meeting coming up on May 11th, and our Santa Cruz staff is coming to the regional meeting where we do professional development and check in and start planning out the following year. And part of that planning is going to include regular and systemic support meetings, and both via Zoom and actually heading to Santa Cruz and evaluating teaching classes and meeting with candidates. But the reciprocal piece of that is I get to beg, borrow, and steal what works in their area. And so it's kind of a two-way relationship that's going to have benefits on both sides for our program.
Member Riggs?
Just a comment to start off with before the question, but with the visit, I noticed there were only 7 interviews of completers, and you've got more than 400 completers. And so I guess I can congratulate the team for discovering as much as you did. But when you think of the vast area that you are serving, and then the issues that arose at the visit, I'm wondering from you why more visits weren't done or called for to do more checking perhaps of the wide region, because if you only have 7 completers overall and really not a huge percentage of people were interviewed who were in the programs either. So I just wonder how the team thought about that.
Well, just that the team noted that the initial numbers that we had, particularly for the induction programs and then for the completers, as well as for designated subjects, were not where we wanted them to be to get an accurate sample. So we kept asking every day for more people. But I think that the team did uniformly feel that between the candidates that we were able to interview, the completers that we were able to interview, as well as everybody else in the program, that we could triangulate and be confident in the findings that we have. But we also recommended a revisit, specifically, with this purpose in mind, to check for broader consensus and triangulation in groups where the numbers did not come up to what we had hoped during the visit.
Yeah, if you'll notice, one of the stipulations is that the revisit before the programs that include the intern, the designated subjects, and the induction. So essentially, all of the programs are going to be have to have constituents interviewed. So,
may I follow up with my question to the?
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had. I mean, obviously, I'm the executive director. I know a lot of people in the program. I was on my cell phone texting people saying, "Hey, Steve, get here, please. We need the numbers." But looking back, and always hindsight is 2020. And Sarah and I have had that conversation about knowing that this revisit is coming up and where we're weak, and we'll definitely do things differently. I think the team, got who they got because I think on the institution side we could have, approached it differently. And again, that's me looking back now, it says with my lack of experience looking forward, and so that will not be a problem in the future.
Thank you. Okay. Member Chakowski?
Yeah, I was looking back at the list of people that you interviewed for the visit, and unless I'm missing something, I don't see any mentors or coaches interviewed either. Oh, I see. Okay. Then scratch.
Are there other questions or comments from the members of the Committee on Accreditation? Member Riggs?
I think maybe this is just a question for this group, the COA, and I see over and over, as you pointed out, that the pattern is in the design of the program, and it seems huge. I mean, I feel like there are standards, there are pieces of standards that can be addressed and fixed rather easily, and then there are others that are monumental. And the numbers that you have in your programs, and being so vast a region, and when I see, for example, the concern that was pointed out in the report that I agree with completely related to the intern program, that people are serving as intern or had been serving as interns without having met subject matter with, and I know that you're fixing that. That's more easily fixed. But then also programmatic things about the design where they're not getting the information about English learners and students with special needs until the end of their program. And the hours that are pre-service hours to the intern program are supposed to include that, and before they ever step foot in the classroom. And so here they have been teaching, impacting kids in the state of California without having met the prerequisite requirement for being an intern through subject matter, which now might be fixed. But how are you fixing the curriculum is my question, because you're producing people who are going to have a license who really didn't have an opportunity to have the prerequisite knowledge before they set foot as an intern. And now do they, I guess I'm concerned that they're not meeting the standards for being a teacher. And then when I also see the reference to TPEs throughout, and it's like it's a cursory attempt. Yes, the TPEs are on the syllabi, but really we don't really know much about it. Instructors will say, right? So how is it that you're really producing teachers who are credentialed for the state of California? And so related to what happens in the way the decision comes down is my question as to how to best think about not the institution in this sense, but the children of the state of California and the teachers that are coming out of this program right now, or these programs right now. What is it that do we feel comfortable with the stipulations as stated, as assuring that the teachers that will come out are ready to serve the state of California's children?
Member Alvarado.
So I share similar concerns, and in that some of the concerns that were discovered in the site visit are foundational to teacher prep. Issues of resource, issues of curriculum, content. And so maybe this is a question for the staff, whether there could be an additional stipulation, because it sounds like you've expanded rapidly, but in expanded rapidly, something has suffered. And so I'm wondering if there can be an additional stipulation or a couple that basically says no additional students until they figure these things out, get them straight, but also no further expansion until they figure these things out. Because again, every expansion stresses your system even more so. And given that there are foundational gaps in what you're doing, I'm just concerned that we don't expose more students to the kind of concerns that Member Riggs has brought, but also provide you with the opportunity to sort of, get your sea legs in what you're doing before you take on additional. And so it's a question for staff, I guess, whether we can set those additional stipulations.
So you mentioned a couple of them. You might want to take a look at the green sheet that's from the handbook to make sure that we're being consistent with what's in the handbook. One of the things, that you always have as an opportunity, and you've used it quite well, but I was scanning the item to see if it included that, is immediate reports. So you might want some sort of report either at the June meeting or at the August meeting that gives you some sense that things are progressing quickly. The issue with no additional new programs has also been one that's been used before. The issue of not accepting candidates is really a difficult one, I think, and more challenging from an institutional perspective. But that is an option, but it also, I would caution that might be carefully considered. I don't know Terry, if you wanted to add anything.
The other thing I heard Commissioner Alvarado mention was expansion as far as additional locations, satellites. That's not on this list because it wasn't something that really had come up a lot in the past, so it was not listed in here. As we do our discussion about how the handbook should be updated, I think that's something we want to definitely add in, that there could be something of the institution can't add additional satellite locations. It's not in your handbook now. Your handbook is only guidance for you, so you can definitely, you have to take the action that you feel is appropriate.
So I believe Mr. Lee would like to speak. Is this in answer to one of the points that was raised right now?
It's in support of statements made by two of the directors, I'm not sure of the titles. Committee members. Members. I share your concern. I live in this community. I was a site principal for 13 years, and the hardest thing you do is hire people. Good people, good teachers make good schools, good students. So I share your concern. We're not going to expand our programs or additional satellites because we want to get it right. And so that's really a commitment I'm making to the committee, is that I share your concern, and I want to make sure we're doing what's best for kids.
Thank you. So Member Chakowski and then Member Amos.
Yeah, I just had a kind of basic question, and that had to do with the nature of your collaboration with these other entities beyond your immediate geography or also in your immediate area. On what basis is, for example, teacher induction offered to candidates? Do the districts pay for that? Do you collect tuition? How is that? Is it revenue generating for you to offer induction to additional people?
Yeah, we are a fee for service.
Uh-huh. So I can see there could be an incentive to partner with more people. I mean, hypothetically, from a strictly business model.
Yeah, but again, I made the commitment earlier that we got to get things right before we look to do more.
Right.
We're not about generating revenue. We're really about meeting the needs of the districts we work with.
Sure. Thank you.
Member Amos?
To consider maybe folding in, instead of adding additional stipulations, maybe looking at where some of our concerns may fit into the stipulations that are already there, and maybe ensuring that they're addressed in this report that's coming forward.
Well, this is an action item, so do we have a motion yet? Member Amos, do you have some language you can for the motion?
I move that we accept the report as written with the request that we wanted more. Commissioner Riggs, what was your concern about the induction program? Did you have a? No.
I guess what I heard was that there be, I mean, one of the things we talked about with interns was subject matter.
Yeah.
Well, and then lack of expansion. Are you referring? Are we trying to craft some sort of
We're trying to craft a motion
to make the stipulations that are stated, and there are a number of them. I mean, there's like a whole bunch on here that they're more specific. Was that what you were saying?
Yeah, more specific instead of adding additional. Just how could we fit in what?
Would it help you to go through the 11 proposed stipulations and say, yes, we like that one, or we would like to specify it in some way?
Or at the next meeting, either June or August, we'd like specific information on some of these. Like maybe some of these could be followed on, like the most urgent ones are the ones that are relevant and timely for this time of year, given your large reach, that you could think, okay, focusing on generating some materials to bring to us at that time, just to help move things forward in a productive, constructive way. So go one at a time and then decide if it's something that we need to ask for anything to review in June.
So on that note, do we want to look then at stipulation number 1? The institution demonstrates compliance with general precondition 5B and intern preconditions 2 and 7 within 30 days of COA action.
Yes.
Leave it.
As stated.
Stay. Okay. Each program, number 2, each program in the educator preparation unit is based on sound rationale, informed by theory and research, and aligned with program standards that fosters coherence among and is clearly represented in all educator preparation programs. So,
so what is that?
And the stem at the top says that within 1 year, the institution provide evidence that. So there's both the timeline and what evidence is required.
And a normal way that would be demonstrated would be in the revisit. That's a very normal way. So you could ask for something prior to the revisit if there's something you think in writing could be helpful. Or number 2 would definitely be monitored at a revisit.
Member Alvarado?
So I know that in the past when there's been this sort of a review, that we have opted for quarterly reports. And I would given the severity of some of the issues, none of them are going to be addressed immediately. I appreciate the responsiveness of some items, but it may be helpful to have, as part of the STEM, to just say that in quarterly visits, these will be addressed, so that we're getting quarterly reports. Quarterly reports.
Quarterly
That's
reports? Right. So the current language says that within 1 year, the institution provide evidence that. I'm not sure where the revisit comes into that. It must be one of the stipulations.
It's below.
The number 11.
Then 10 is the quarterly reports, so those are in there.
Okay, so there's already quarterly reports.
Have we defined the evidence or what that's going to look like exactly?
We typically don't do that, because there's a lot of flexibility in what they provide. So we always say we ask for the what, and the institution tells us how.
Member Riggs?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the issue of interns, so in one part of the report, it says that you've got the pre-service component for interns. And then later it says they're not getting their information about English learners and students with special needs until the end of their program. And some of those standards are supposed to be met in the pre-service component that qualifies you to be an intern. I feel like that piece of the curriculum, they're not employable until they've met the standards for the pre-service requirement. And I feel like that part is huge, is something that needs to be addressed more quickly. I don't think that's talking about subject matter. I thought, and maybe I'm misspeaking here.
Dr. Solari Colombini, do you have a clarification?
That's talking about subject matter, and I'm talking about something else. Yes.
So I think I need to clarify. All of the intern candidates meet the pre-service requirements. What the team member was referring to in the report was that the coursework, the course sequence that occurred in the program happened to have the EL course at the end of the candidate's experience in the program. And the candidates mentioned that, gee, it would have been nice to have that course first. And so, in the design of the program, program design is kind of what the team was talking about, and the findings are. So it's not that all candidates had their pre-service EL requirements met prior to stepping into the classroom. Absolutely. However, that in-depth course on EL happened in that course sequence that everyone kind of puts together. It landed at the end of their career, and so it should have. Career is the wrong word. So at the end of their preparation, and it should have occurred they would have liked it to occur in the beginning, and so that's where that came in. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Member Czakowski.
So I'm imagining what it's like to be you, because I'm responsible for a little tiny segment of this big thing that you guys are responsible for. And I'm looking at number 2, the stipulation number 2. And I really think if I were you, that's the thing I would need to invest in right now at this time of the year, getting ready for next year, getting mentors selected, thinking about the coursework, the sequence changes. It's all kind of got to be based on some, understanding of the bigger picture. I think if you really focused in on that first, a lot of these other things would just kind of shake out. You would find them in there. And so I guess what I would suggest is that we ask for some evidence or artifacts, whatever is useful to you in communicating to your stakeholders and other people and your candidates, what your rationale and theory and research aligned to program standards. How is your program going to implement the standards of the respective programs? How can you communicate that to an external audience? I think if you could do that, that would launch you in a direction that would be productive and help us understand where you're planning to go.
So I know I saw Member Crisia and Member Amos.
I know that we give the programs flexibility, but do we have some exemplars that we could lead them to so that they can look at them, so that they can get some ideas?
I think they probably have some ideas, and if they ask for it, Sarah will, of course, give them examples. The routine thing when you ask for quarterly reports is the stipulations go down on a table, and then they tell you what they've done, and they link to supporting evidence, and you review that at your meeting. So if they prepare that for number 2 and they send it back either in June or in August, you would review it and you would say, this seems complete for this. This part doesn't look as complete to us. So you will have the ability to look at what they prepare for you, tell them when it meets your expectations and which areas don't still meet. So I think Sarah will be able to support them in that.
This kind of goes to the conversation we were having earlier as to, if some of these things were a little bit more defined, or for lack of a better word, in the beginning, they would not get so far down the road. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Member Amos?
Thank you. As we go round and round with this for your patience and understanding. We just want to make sure that we support you in getting it right. And so to that end, for number 2, to elaborate on what Terry said, there is a motion on the table that we amend number 2 to include a quarterly report that specifically addresses their program issues in number 2.
Okay, so just to clarify for myself, number 10 requires a quarterly, stipulation 10 requires a quarterly report, but not specifically what should be included in the report. So what I'm hearing you say, Member Amos, is that stipulation 2 should be included in each quarterly report?
Yes, thank you.
Member Chakowski?
And I might say, again, just for the quarterly is 3 months out, right? So maybe sooner than that, number 2 is something that's maybe addressed as Terry was sort of proposing. Hey, so that you guys know what the game is and what evidence is required. And so that as you go about documenting the rest of these stipulations and providing the links that are acceptable, you kind of already know what's needed so that you're not kind of trying to do this thing for 12 of these and then finding out that it wasn't what you thought was in line with, this body's mandate of accountability.
So Member Borges?
I would just say realistic.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's, yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So can you say that in the form of a
as stated in the report, okay, go with the 11 stipulations with a quarterly report, with the first report due at the August meeting, and that it emphasize item number 2.
Stipulation number 2.
I'm sorry, stipulation number 2.
So do we have discussion on this motion, or how should we vote on each of these? We need a second, and then we can discuss. Thank you. Motion. Do we have a second? And seconded by Member Krisha. Now discussion. Thank you. Member Riggs and then Member Alvarado.
So just 2 aspects to that. I personally want a report on all of the stipulations. I'm not sure why we're just highlighting number 2.
It would be all of them.
All of them. Okay.
All of them.
Then I'm okay with that. But I also thought we had an option, and I appreciate your commitment to not expanding. But number 3, what talks about the satellite locations and the resources, it just seems like it should be there stated that until the institution is able to manage the resources for the satellites they presently have, there will be no more expansion. So,
and it's not.
So thank you again for your patience as we want to work with you to, continue to strengthen your programs. This is really testing my knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order. So I believe we had a motion, we had a second. Member Riggs was going to discuss, and Member Alvarado had the next turn at discussion about the motion that had been on the table.
So given what Member Riggs has just shared, I would offer a friendly amendment to the stipulation number 3, that given that the institution is committed to not expanding, that we sort of formalize this as a portion or as a part of number 3, that the institution will not offer the program in new additional sites until such time as all of these concerns are addressed.
Is there a second to the friendly amendment? Seconded by.
We need the motioner to agree to the friendly amendment. Then we need the seconder to agree to the friendly amendment if it's acceptable.
Okay. I'll take the friendly amendments to 2 and 3. And who seconded before? You did?
Seconded by Member Krusha.
But
And
but he said until these things are addressed. To me, I don't know what that means. Does that mean addressed?
Okay, our normal thing at this point is until the stipulations have been removed.
That's the language.
Normally in the language, it's until the stipulations have been removed and the accreditation decision has been
Okay, then I'm
changed
cool with
to-
that.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry. That's what I said. Or meant to say.
so it seems to me that we have an amendment that was amended. We have a second. And the amendment was accepted by the original person who made the motion. There was a second for the amendment, and now it's still discussion time.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion?
Is there further discussion, or are you ready to vote?
Or do we need the amendment to be read? Do we need the motion to be read?
Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Or I could summarize, I believe, the motion if you would like.
Summarize, Terry.
That might be helpful.
All right.
Go, Terry.
So the motion is that the accreditation recommendation of the team and the 11 stipulations on here, with the addition that in number 3, that the additional satellites are not going to be added until the stipulations have been addressed. The quarterly reporting starting no later than the August committee meeting, and that a revisit will take place within a year of the action.
Right.
What happened to two?
That was the first one.
Oh, well, I heard someone say the emphasis on number 2, but then I also heard other members say they wanted emphasis on all of the issues.
Okay.
But clearly, Member Kajowski has suggested that number 2 is a really prudent place to begin. But I think in every quarterly report, they will actually report on all of these. There may be a report if we haven't done anything on this yet, because we've been so busy doing these other things. Normally, every quarterly report reports on every stipulation that is in the action.
Just in term, am I allowed to speak?
Of course.
Just in terms of moving their
Program
forward, kind of starting with 2 and really thinking, if I had to provide evidence that's going to lift this stipulation, what would I need to put on the table in front of the COA? Like, that's what I would be thinking. And, maybe you just spend a little extra time. Maybe there's 8 items hyperlinked when you write your report up about number 2. Like, spend a little time on that one, because then I think the other ones will just be easier to address. It's like, I don't think all 11 of these for your program are created equal. I think in your situation, having read your stuff and listened to you talk and heard about the changes, welcome to the position, right? Figuring out what the big picture is and what your mission is will drive everything else and help you to have some parameters that will limit the scope of your work. So that's just why I'm just like, as a program director myself, thinking about number 2 being the first step in this. You just don't want to waste your time, and you want to get the most out of this. And if it's due in August, you have stakeholders you can meet with all summer, from whom you can build that evidence for number 2. That's all.
All right. So I believe now we have a motion. It's been seconded, and we can vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. So thank you again for being here, for your patience with the process. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your hard work. You guys dug really deep, and that's, it's obvious that you really want to improve and you really want to do a good job, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you also to the team and to Dr. Solari Colombini. And Dr. Smith, the team lead. All right. So we will be moving on to item 21.
We're good.
Item 21 is the report of the accreditation team to the Riverside Unified School District. Consultant Karen Sacramento will present this action item. Joining her at the table is team lead Jody Schwartzbart. I hope I got that right. And institutional representative Hans Koffold. Thank you. Teacher induction specialist. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? Right. So Ms. Sacramento, will you begin, please?
Good afternoon, COA members. As the state consultant to this visit, it is my pleasure to share the report from the Riverside Unified School District Teacher Induction Program site visit, which was held just a couple of weeks ago on April 15th through 17th. I'd like to acknowledge Hans Caulfield, the Riverside Unified School District Teacher Induction Specialist. His very strong and supportive leadership was highly recognized and much admired across stakeholder groups, and I'd like to note that. And also an acknowledgement of the committed and unified team of teacher leaders who work together to provide the Riverside Unified Induction Program to both general education and education specialist candidates. They represent a very unified and strong alliance between the district and the teachers union to support induction program candidates. I'd also like to recognize the dedicated work and professionalism of the site visit team, Julie Sheldon and Steve Thornton, and the exemplary leadership of Jody Schwartzfarb as the team lead. Her expertise and guidance was evident through each stage of the visit. So I will now turn it over to Jody to review the program findings.
Thank you for having us here today. I'd like to begin by echoing Karen's sentiment about the team. We had a variety of levels of experience among the team members, and it was a pleasant experience to see how people came together and supported each other. I'd also like to thank Karen for her leadership. It's always a pleasure for me to get to work with her. So the atmosphere of the team heading into the visit was very positive, which is always a good start to things. Along with that, all of my interactions with Hans and his team, I'd like to recognize were always very positive, very welcoming. I got to meet Hans at the state meeting back in December, and then at the 2-month out visit and various emails and texts and phone calls. He was very responsive to anything that was needed, both prior to and during the visit. His team, very friendly, very excited to share what they've got going, and they've got a lot of good things happening. Right now, the Riverside program, I've thought about how to say this in a positive way. It's a perfect storm, but in a positive storm. So we're in the season of spring, so let's think of it's a positive explosion of the flowers blooming minus the allergies. Riverside has recently, in the last year or two, started professional growth systems, or system in their district with all the PD and all the support for teachers and admin credentialing situations. And that has started. Hans has become the lead for the induction program. The induction program has switched to full-time release model versus full-time classroom teachers. The standards, right, the site visit, all of these things happening at once. And while they can be overwhelming and stressful, really they've come together. Okay, I'm going to switch from seasons to food to kind of make a really good souffle. But everyone's working together well. I was fortunate to be in on some of the interviews, and it was a pleasure to hear candidates, especially those in year 2 who had experienced the prior system and the current system, not to say anything derogatory about what had happened in the past, right? Everyone's working to provide the best support, the best program possible at that time, but just their recognition and appreciation of where the program is today. A huge strength was the focus on mentoring. That came through loud and clear with all stakeholder groups. It was pleasurable to hear the candidates say that they could contact their mentors at any time. It can be 11 o'clock p.m. on a Sunday night, and I'll text my mentor, and she answers at 11 o'clock at night. So it's clear that those involved with the program are working to meet the standards as they are laid out and with the objective of supporting the teachers. That's what we're here for. It's nice to see it in action as well. I also would like to recognize with the program that there is a large emphasis on choice and flexibility. While those are in the standards, they're not always as evident as they are in Riverside. So throughout the program, candidates in this new current system have an opportunity to really focus everything around their ILP goal. The candidates commented on how individualized the program felt and how responsive it is to their needs. I would also like to acknowledge Hans. While I might have harassed him a little bit about all that he's doing, he is working to connect Induction with all other programs in the professional growth systems in Riverside, as well as the IHEs, whether it's through their leadership advisory committee or other groups going on in the district. Yes, very much so. My harassment of him is all the time he gives outside of his workday on his weekends, first thing in the morning, late at night. But through this, not only is he spreading a positive message about Induction, he is modeling the value of relationships for the mentors, for the teachers. So good job. The team was unanimous. Having been involved with visits for a long time, I don't know how many I've been on where there are no concerns. And this was unanimous on the part of the team that all standards are met. So we recommend accreditation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your service as team lead and to the entire team. We now invite the institutional representative to briefly comment about the visit. So we remind you that this is not a time to dispute the team report, as if you would, but rather to provide any thoughts that you'd like to share with us about the visit.
So I want to start off by thanking Karen as a consultant. What Jody referred to as the perfect storm, I was going to address too. I was thinking of it's perfect timing of the visit because there have been a lot of changes. Our program had a very strong director for over 25 years, and I had the privilege of working beside her. And beginning last April, when I first met with Karen as a consultant at our initial year-out meeting, it felt very supportive, and I knew where Riverside Unified's induction program was going to go with the emphasis on mentoring, and it just, the whole process seemed so comfortable. It was, like Jody said, a lot of work, but in a great way, really being able to have that chance to message as we go into the new division, and then also with our new standards. So just very thankful to Karen's leadership. Very practical advice. We met monthly by phone, and each time, I had notes, and I still have my binder full of notes, so it's sort of fun looking back, but very, practical advice that really helped the process. And then Jody, thank you so much for your leadership. Again, as she mentioned, she came out 2 months ahead and had a chance to just look at our context, because with the induction program leaving curriculum and instruction division and entering into the new professional growth systems division, it is sort of hard to wrap your head around it. So Jody had a chance to sort of experience a few hours in our division and see the collaboration. And then I just wanted to note just the professionalism in the contact that I had with her, because there are times that receiving feedback about your program is very stressful, and she was able to craft the comments and clarifications with positive presuppositions. So I was reading it thinking, I know what she's doing. She's doing here. It's very positive, but it's very helpful to reduce the anxiety so we could really work on, on clarifications. So I greatly appreciate that. Let's see. And then finally, I wanted to thank the Commission for their consistent, clear message on the interpretation and really the spirit of the induction standards, which are that it is a robust mentoring system focused on that ILP. And with that strong message I've received from the Commission, we've been able to cascade that through all stakeholder groups. And I was just very pleased that at the end of the process, hearing that message, has been received by everyone in our division, and then especially the candidates realize that this is a program for them and not something that happens to them. And I believe that's it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and sharing your perspective with us. At this time, the COA members are invited to make comments, ask questions. Member Chakowski.
Well, thank you for your obvious passion for this work and expertise and relationships. It just kind of like you can just sense it from like 2 minutes of you talking. So keep up what you're doing. I found what comments about your ability to integrate and align Induction's work and mission with other departments in your district to be really important. I work on that myself in my own district. And I'm just wondering if you had one secret ingredient to making that happen for the rest of us, what would it be?
I think the messaging and I'm guilty of this sometimes, that, we feel like we need to have all the answers and we don't. What we do is we think of it as a broker of expertise. So the mentors see themselves, as I do, of that brokering expertise, and we're the point person on support for the candidate, but we broker out to everyone in the district and community, and even more so. And I think it's just sending that consistent message that it's a robust mentoring system, and that we each have our strengths, but we rely on other people to accomplish it. And then we use a lot of metaphors and different, things. We talk about like the induction hug that we get, like from all sides support. So it's not just going to be from one person.
I think I refer to it as like the anaconda's embrace.
Yes.
I think your induction hug is a little less threatening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member comments or questions, accolades? No. All right. Well, this is an action item, and I'd like to know if we have a motion. Moved by Member Alvarado. Do we have a second? Seconded by Member Chakowski. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations, and thank you again for being here. All right. We need sentence frames. Right. Exactly. We'll have to change the script. How do you say Bob's name? Okay. Thank you. All right. So, do we have everyone?
I guess we should ask whether Fresno Pacific is on Zoom.
And
Sharon. I'm sorry. They all are.
There's
Sharon and there's Fresno.
Okay, great. All right, so this is item 22, the report of the accreditation team to Fresno Pacific University. Consultant Bob Locks will present this action item. Joining him via technology are institutional representatives Gary Grammons, Dean of Education, David Jones, Assessment Coordinator, and Team Lead Sharon Russell. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right. Mr. Locks, will you begin, please?
Sure. Thank you. March 25th to 27th, the site visit team was at Fresno Pacific University. They were very accommodating to all of our needs. Fresno Pacific had 14 total programs, and we had 9 team members that attended the meeting, and the meeting went very smoothly. Sharon Russell, our team lead, will now report the findings.
Well, I want to thank Fresno Pacific for its organization, its logistics, its quick response to requests for evidence that we made several times. Also, its collegiality, the Schweibach, and Gary can tell you what that is, and then the golf cart at the end of a long day. We appreciated all of those things. Thank you for being outstanding hosts. And then I want to thank the exemplary team with which I was partnered. And I'd like to thank whatever CTC staff member was that made that team. Great people, working hard, collegial, doing a lot of peer reviewing and support. And finally, I also want to thank Bob Luggs for his collaborative leadership and his fairness and his pragmatic attitude about accreditation, and also his truly profound mentoring of new members to the BIR. All of that made the visit go very smoothly. And now I'd like to talk about a recommendation. Based on the fact that the team found all program standards met and 4 of the 5 common standards met, and Common Standard 4 met with concerns, the team recommends unanimously that a judgment of accreditation be made. I would like to talk just briefly about some things that may have not been apparent in the report. So first of all, the mission of the university is that teaching is a call to redemptive service. This is deeply embedded from the candidate that's beginning his or her program to the HR membership and the partners and the superintendents talking about the program. This is throughout. And the other thing is the importance of community, and that the community collaborates and mentors everybody in the entire pipeline of the program. We were all very impressed by that and felt that it created a great deal of rigor and support for everyone in the program. And with that, I'll end my report. Oh, excuse me, there's one other thing I do need to say. The team further recommends that Fresno Pacific University present a 7-year report to the COA that demonstrates consistent collection, analysis, and use of candidate and completer data to inform program improvement. Now, to clarify this, all the programs were found to be collecting data, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind that every candidate who completed their program completed the competency requirements required of the program. This is about the aggregation of all the data and the ability to pull that data all together and demonstrate it or reveal it in either a task stream or Illumina or another aggregated nature. And I'll let it stay at that. So with that, I give you the recommendations of the team.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. We now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you that this is not a time to dispute the team report, but rather to provide us with any thoughts or insights that you had about the visit.
Well, greetings from Fresno, Terry Clark's favorite Central Valley town. We appreciated from our end the support of the consultant and the team lead. This was a heavy lift. We had over 850 interviewees in 5 locations and 14 different VCons. And so the preparation from our end was intricate, and the support that we received in terms of formulating the calendar and the interview schedule was extraordinarily helpful. The detailed instructions about how the visit was to be conducted were helpful as well, and in hosting the visit. I would say the same thing about the team that Sharon said as well. It's a delightful group to work with. We invited their observations and comments, and felt that, or every program director felt that their perspectives were helpful and meaningful. And we look forward to following through on the recommendations of the team in our 7-year report.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Committee on Accreditation members to ask questions, offer comments. Member Riggs?
I did find it interesting on the assessment, because oftentimes I think we hear the opposite of what you all found, that well, maybe that's not quite true, but looking at the data that you have being reported across degree programs rather than credential programs. So in some ways, that might allow you to think about it from the unit level, but not necessarily. I guess I should correct myself. But I wondered how the team came up with your designation of met with concerns related to that. Were there enough programs that were able to look at data to inform program decisions and, to truly assess themselves? It wasn't quite clear to me related to how it was written, And that seems like a key piece of that standard.
Yeah. Do you want Gary or, Bob, why don't you go ahead and answer that?
I think what we saw that the programs all assess themselves fairly well, but it was just that aggregate of getting all that information together from all the different departments and all the different programs and seeing what the unit could do as a whole. I think was our big issue, and we just felt that we couldn't let that go as it not being a full unit assessment.
If I can speak to that as well, one of the challenges that every institution has that has a number of accrediting agencies that they respond to is trying to figure out a way to do accreditation, assessment and accreditation in ways that isn't unduly burdensome. And so what we did was we tried to meld both our responsibilities to our institution and to WASC and to the CTC in a comprehensive way that ended up breaking the link between our assessments and the CTC standards. So what we did was we linked our CTC standards or program standards to the assessment practices and the data that we collected. And the observation of the team was that very fine link at the unit level between the assessment practices, the data collection, reflection, and the action, and the CTC standards was not as clear as it needs to be, not as not as connected. And that was what the team found, and that's the steps that we're taking to address in this coming year.
So that is more consistent with what I'm used to hearing. But I thought I read in the report that also some of the data was lumping together program information in such a way that the individual programs couldn't really use it to reflect and create program goals. And the example given in the report was on special education. Is that correct? Okay. And so, I mean, I think it's difficult at the unit level, but usually programs have their own information and they can pursue it at the individual program level. And so I did have some concern related to finding that some of the programs, it sounded like they didn't have access to their own data and it couldn't be disaggregated by program. Is that true?
I think for special ed, that was true. Yes.
Any other member comments or questions? Member Alvarado.
So as a follow-up to that clarification, then has there been efforts to remedy that, to be able to provide the special education program with program-specific data?
Thank you for your question. My name is Davey. I coordinate assessment for the School of Education at Fresno Pacific University. Yes, there has been. In fact, we were able to show some nascent efforts in that direction to the team members while they were here, that we've already started formally compiling that data specifically for that purpose.
Any other member comments? We have a team recommendation of accreditation with a 7th year report, and this is an action item. So do we have a motion? And if so, what is the motion? Moved by Member Riggs. Thank you. Do we have a second? Member Borghese. So it's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation of the team. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? So the motion carries. Congratulations, and thank you, Dr. Gremmons, Dr. Jones, Dr. Russell, and Mr. Locks.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right. So next, we have item 23, which is the report of the accreditation team to the Lodi Unified School District.
Art did join us via Zoom because he's ill.
Okay. So as you just heard, Consultant Art Boyd will present this action item via technology. Hi. Joining him at the table are institutional representatives Sherry Flemmer, Coordinator of Professional Development and Teacher Induction, Lisa Katowski, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and Kathy Washer, Superintendent. So I can see that someone's not. Okay, thank you. Also joining via technology is Team Lead Kim Ubelhart. Does anyone need to recuse themselves?
And I guess Kim is in, oh, she is right there.
Yeah, Kim is there. Yeah, she did. All right, so thank you. Mr. Boyd, would you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. Lodi Unified School District site visit took place from April 8th through the 10th at their district office in Lodi, California. A total of 74 interviews were conducted with various stakeholders throughout the site visit, and the site visit proceeded in accordance with all normal accreditation protocols. The induction team at Lodi USD was great to work with throughout the year leading up to the site visit, and they were extremely thorough in their preparation for the visit. The Lodi USD team is represented today by Lisa Katowski, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and Sherry Flemmer, Coordinator of Professional Development and Teacher Induction. Joining us via technology is the team lead, Kim Ubelhart. Kim is the Executive Director of Teacher Support Services at the Ventura County Office of Education. Kim is an extremely knowledgeable and thoughtful leader, and it was a pleasure to work with her throughout the process. I would also like to thank the other members of our site visit review team, Amy Betancourt and Deborah Kolodny, for contributing their time and expertise to this visit. The team worked diligently in preparation for the visit and worked extremely hard during the visit. I will now stop here and turn it over to Kim, who will present the findings and the accreditation recommendation.
Hello. I too would just like to expand upon what Hart said in terms of our team. It was amazing. It was wonderful working with him. He has a calm demeanor and he really guided us as a leader. And we felt just very trusting of his leadership. And when we had questions, we did not hesitate to ask him in any regard. The team, as Hart mentioned, consisted of Deborah Kolodny and Amy Betancourt, and these two women were extremely dedicated. We had talked about reading the document and then having touch points throughout that we would talk with one another, and every one of them went in, were diligent to writing out questions so that when we had Zoom meetings, we were prepared to ask those questions for clarification and then pass them on to Sherry. So I was very fortunate to work with such a competent team. In terms of our hospitality, I've never been in a 3-story building for a district office, so that was quite amazing, taking elevators and waking our way through the maze. But Sherry did a great job by giving us maps and telling us where we needed to go. It's a beautiful building, and I know that she worked really hard to make sure that we could have the accommodations that we did. I'm sure she did a lot of trading and bartering so that we would have such a great experience, and the technology was wonderful. It worked awesome. I'd like to just begin with some strengths of some things that just really resonated with me. It was an ongoing theme. The most impressionable thing was just interviewing the superintendent and talking about how teachers don't want to leave Lodi and the retention rate is so high, and that teachers that move to Lodi want to stay in Lodi. And it even flowed through that when we were interviewing the district administrators, 2 of them were products of Lodi. So really this whole notion of growing your own is a strength, and it permeates throughout their whole system, no matter who you're talking to. Another key aspect was just the relevancy of the program, all the professional development that they're doing, and the coordination with the professional development, curriculum instruction truly shows that it's a job embedded program. And I think one of the other highlights is that it directly correlates and is interconnected to what the district initiatives are. And so really this whole idea of a teacher induction and job embedded also goes through what the district's initiatives and where they feel like they need to have those professional development opportunities. And all candidates talked about the value of their mentor and that relationship was crucial to their development. So moving on for the program overall, all program standards were met. All common standards were met with the exception of Standard 1 and Standard 4. As we took a look at Standard 1 in particular, we were looking at ideas around involving faculty, stakeholder organization and coordination for decision making, and then having regular opportunities for the personnel to come together and systematically and do some data analysis. So you can see in the report we made some recommendations and there's stipulations that follow. So there was this whole idea around the team meeting together, but in terms of using it to guide future program decisions, that piece was not as evident as we feel that it could be in the future. There again was another idea around the faculty systematically and regularly meeting with outside entities, including the IHEs and P12 settings, and just really reaching out to the broader educational community. So we gave them some suggestions around that standard as well. Moving on to Common Standard 4, which much of this overlaps, you can see how the standards do integrate with one another. And as we look at Standard 4, it was that, again, that whole notion of regularly and systematically collecting data and using that data to make decisions and continuous improvement. And there again, we gave some recommendations on ways that they can collect that data in a systemized manner, and so that it's used to really inform those program decisions. That's pretty much, I'm available for any questions should you have them. I don't think, since the stipulations are outlined before you, I don't think that I need to go into that. But it was a very pleasant visit, and it was wonderful working with Sheree. She was very open to suggestions and not suggestions, but anything that we needed clarifications around.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Ubelhardt, and for your service as the team lead. We now invite the institutional representatives to briefly comment about the visit. We remind you that this is not a time to dispute the findings or the team report, but rather to share with us any thoughts or perspectives you had about the visit.
Well, thank you for having us here and for this opportunity. I do want to thank our team. Hart and Kim were just fabulous to work with. They were very supportive and helpful in what they did, and I have had the opportunity to be on both sides of the site visit accreditation process, and I have to say that they're both equally stressful, but also equally rewarding. What I appreciate most about the accreditation process is that it truly is a growth and reflection model, and that is carried through everything that they do and that we do, and I love that consistency of program, so that what we are teaching our new teachers about the reflection and growth is also modeled by the state and the CTC in their accreditation process. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Anything else? All right, thank you. All right, COA members, would any of you like to make comments or ask questions at this time? Member Riggs?
This is just something I noticed that probably is no big deal, but I just noticed on the report that when there's on common standards, when there's something marked inconsistent and there's nothing, they've met the standard, but there's a box that's marked inconsistent, there's not a section that says rationale, and they're not commenting on that. So I was trying to figure out, well, what was inconsistent about it? But maybe that's never done? Is that...
Remember, it's a new form, so I did notice that this year as well, that some teams built it into the body of the narrative and some didn't. So we probably should clarify that one way or the other if you want it, because it leaves it a question, so.
I like your suggestion. I think you're kind of intimating that we should have that box. Yes. That was really nice. Sometimes, that's like I zone in on, I want to know what the rationale is. It's really nice to have that called out rather than embedded.
Rationale, this is getting into the weeds, but the rationale right now is for if it's met with concerns or not met. So we'll just have to figure out where that other piece goes. If it's a finding of full met, even though there might be a slight inconsistency, it's a matter of degrees. So we'll work on that for sure.
Member Chakowski?
Well, maybe you could even put like a little hyperlink, the X, to like where in the text there might be evidence or some justification rationale for it. It doesn't have to be anything additional or a new box or a new row. I mean, God forbid we put new rows in these things, right? That's too many. My comment to you is I really appreciate your comment about the habits of mind or mindset that is kind of behind this whole process. That I run induction program of my own, and I was kind of impressed when I showed up here the first time, and I thought, these are reflective people who are actually interested in growth, and it's not about, gotcha oversight and things like that. I mean, and I think that mindset, if we could get every teacher in every classroom to work with young people with that mindset, this would be a transformed institution and state, right? So thank you for making that comment. I think that speaks to your experience and, wisdom.
Any other member comments, feedback, questions? Co-Chair Moore?
Yeah, thank you. Just a compliment. Really enjoyed the report, and the things that you need to take action on real manageable, and I'm sure you're probably on it already. And so it was really nice to read this report, and I look forward to hearing about your progress in the seventh year report. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the site team of accreditation with stipulations.
So I have a motion by committee co-chair Moore and a second by member Borges. And all those in favor now can vote and say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the motion carries. So congratulations and thank you for being here. This is like a whirlwind. I know. I know. Hello? I know. Isn't that crazy?
I really thought we were off track.
All right, so moving on. We are now at item 24, which is the report of the accreditation team to Whittier College. Consultant Dr. Sarah Solari Colombini will present this action item. Joining her by technology is Institutional Representative Lauren Swanson, Chair of the Department of Education and Child Development, and Team Lead Colleen Kern. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right, Dr. Solari, will you begin, please?
So I'm going to close out your day.
Do we have the right people?
Here?
There they are.
Whoops, thank you.
I see them. Yes. You're all present. Okay. Okay, good afternoon. Whittier College sponsors 3 preliminary programs, a preliminary multiple and single subject, a mild moderate, and a moderate severe program, and then 1 second-tier program, a teacher induction program that they actually have recently withdrawn. They withdrew it during the site visit. At the site visit, it was April 7th through the 10th of this year, all of these programs were reviewed. As you probably read in the report, the induction program was withdrawn because there were no current candidates and there hadn't been any candidates in it for a year. They had gone back and forth about whether to withdraw the program or not. They just didn't want to seem like they were pulling a program off the table during their site or prior to their site visit. They didn't want that to seem like they were hiding something, and when in fact they weren't. They just didn't have any candidates. So we advise them that, it's okay. It's okay to not have candidates, and it's okay to withdraw your program for that. So you'll see that in the report. But we went ahead and reviewed the program and still made the recommendation that they withdraw that program. But as part of preparing for this site visit also, there was a pre-visit conducted on February 11th with the team lead, Dr. Colleen Kern, and we attended and again finalized that site visit schedule, which was very important, and we were able to really interview everybody associated with Whittier College, and so that when we got there, we were really indoctrinated into the Whittier way, and so that was an interesting thing to see and to experience. So the visit was conducted by the team lead, Dr. Kern, and 3 team members, Sandy Fenderson, Beth Hara, and Christy Pearson-Woolwind. Again, this institution was really prepared, and our visit was easy in the sense that everything was accessible, very accessible. Information was provided immediately if we didn't already have it on their website. And so that made this site visit very easy, and I'm confident in the team's findings. So with that, I'd like to, of course, thank Lauren Swanson and the Education Department for making our job easy when we got there. And I'd like to hand this over to Dr. Kern.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to present our team's report about our visit to Whittier College. First, I want to thank the team for being incredibly conscientious, analytical, responsive, and thorough in all of their work. I cannot say enough positive things about this team of extraordinary people. They were all a pleasure to work with. Once again, thank you to the staff and faculty of Whittier College for their hospitality and for their fast responses to any questions we had, specifically to Jessica and Lauren, who went above and beyond to make the visit successful. Thanks to the staff, faculty, and administration of Whittier College for being so responsive, we were able to meet with all necessary personnel and stakeholders and review all necessary documentation. Finally, I would like to thank Sarah for her collaboration, advising, experience, and insight. She was integral to the smooth process for all involved. I'd like to briefly highlight 3 of the many strengths that make the Whittier program special. Whittier College has a unique culture based on their founding ideals with a focus on consensus-based decision-making. It was apparent to the team that all decisions and discussions are naturally inclusive and all voices are present around the table. Staff and faculty are regularly collaborating. The programs and their stakeholders are naturally collaborating. The program and the college are constantly collaborating. Collaboration is a natural part of their way to go about education. Secondly, the structure of the gen ed and special ed programs is unique, using the trunk and branch model. That is, all students in gen ed and special ed credential programs take a set of core courses together, learning from each other along the way. Then they branch into their specialization coursework. Students and faculty reported the impact that this collaboration made on them, and students noted how this allowed them to have insight into the wide range of educational approaches. Third, the programs are very small, as described in the enrollment statistics in the report. As a result, the faculty and staff of Whittier College can provide an individualized and personal plan and advising for each student. Within those paper-based systems, there are multiple opportunities to respond to the individual candidate and their varying needs. The programs offer a unique approach, and they are poised to have an increasingly larger impact on the education community. We as a team unanimously found that all common standards were met, and all program standards were met with the exception of the Induction Standard 3, which was met with concerns, though at this time the Induction program has been withdrawn. Because of these strengths and many more, and as a result of the evidence gathered via interviews and review of documentation, the team unanimously recommends accreditation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Karn, and thank you for your service as the team lead. Do any of the Committee on Accreditation members wish to make comments or ask questions? I'm sorry. I see. I didn't read the script. I didn't look at the script. Okay. I'm sorry. Please accept my apologies. We now invite the institutional representative to briefly comment about the visit. And we'll remind you that this is not the time to dispute the team report, but rather to provide your thoughts or perspectives about the visit. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, fantastic.
Faintly.
I just wanted to say thank you so much to Sarah, Colleen, and all the members of the team. It was truly a great experience working with them. They asked us a lot of very deeply reflective questions, and we were really happy to be able to answer them and provide them the documents that they wanted. We think that we honestly took this as a fantastic opportunity to self-reflect and to grow, and because of it, we're really excited about moving into the next stages of our program and into the next academic year.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for your time and being with us and sharing your thoughts. So now it's time for the COA members if you have comments or questions that you'd like to raise. My goodness, I think it was all so well done that they're speechless. So do we have a motion regarding the recommendation of the site visit team? Member Alvarado?
Team's recommendation.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Member Czukowski. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, so the motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So now I think it's time for recess. All right. We will now recess the meeting until 8:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I get to go. All right.